Zuko's character arc is the most electrifying part of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Even when the show struggles, Zuko's fight to sift through his complicated feelings of helplessness, guilt, and yearning is always compelling. And when the show soars, Zuko's challenges become yet more poignant, affecting, and sometimes even satisfying. Richly satisfying. In Season 2, certain characters take the spotlight in certain sections of the show before receding more to the background, but the one character who stays in the foreground throughout the entire season is Zuko. After receiving a lot of turns of good fortune and quite a bit of help from his uncle Iroh, Zuko connects with Katara when they're thrown in prison together in Ba Sing Se. However, in one of the most heart-rending moments in the entire show, he chooses his father. He chooses Azula. He chooses everything he had been moving away from. And then, remarkably, radiantly, he chooses against all that at the midpoint of Season 3. He manages to reject all that glamour and all that glitz and all that power and all that feeling of status to join the Avatar and oppose his father. But what if that never happened? What if Zuko stayed a villain? How would that affect him? And how would that affect his relationships with others? Thematically, it would send a very grim message about humanity. The message sent by the original show is that while change is hard, it is not impossible. It may be difficult to get there, and getting there may not be a straight line of progress, and there may be a number of obstacles along the way. But if one never loses their desire to lift the confusion cloaking them, they will get there, especially if they have someone like Iroh to help them. The message sent by Zuko remaining evil is that one's worst impulses will always overwhelm them, regardless of how hard they try to stop this from happening. A world in which Zuko never redeems himself is a much darker world. Let's explore it. This is Avatar Explained. Zuko stays evil. Let's start with how this would work logically. Instead of being ambivalent about being back in his father's good graces and having his position as crown prince back, Zuko is ecstatic. He forgets all about his uncle. He forgets all about the different sides of himself he discovered while traveling across the Earth Kingdom. He forgets about the empathy Katara showed him, even though she had every reason not to. He loves being at his father's right hand, even if that means committing genocide on the Earth Kingdom and killing all the people he's gotten to know and care about and see as more than just statistics. He forgets about the serenity he enjoyed while serving tea at the Jasmine Dragon. He forgets all that. This would radically simplify his character, and it's rather implausible in my mind, but let's say it happens. A few flickers of doubt haunt him, but on the whole he is completely satisfied with the fallout from his decision at the end of Season 2. How does this affect the 100-Year War? Well, for one, he doesn't stay in his father's good graces forever. Ozai only respects Zuko because he believes Zuko killed the Avatar. Once he finds out the Avatar is alive, he goes back to resenting Zuko. I don't think Ozai banishes him again, though. This is after the Day of Black Sun, and while Ozai avoided being deposed, he's nervous and he's preparing for his endgame. If he's thinking logically, he keeps Zuko around. If he isn't and he sends Zuko away, I don't think Zuko joins Team Avatar. That would be shallow drama. Characters should be propelled by the choices they make. They should not get a happy ending despite consistently making foolish choices. Decisions should have consequences. Also, Team Avatar is not going to accept Zuko unless he is willing to demonstrate knowledge of what he did wrong. If he came to Team Avatar and said that he is just joining out of convenience, and implied that he still sought his father's approval, they wouldn't accept him. Not even close. Not after everything he did to them. So he is caught in a sort of purgatory. It's possible his father calls him back when all seems lost. It's also possible he stays brooding in the Earth Kingdom for the rest of the show. However, even if that is the case, he comes back after the end of the series. He doesn't become a farmer. In the original timeline, he defeats Zula in order to take the throne, while Aang fights the Fire Lord. In this timeline, there is no one to take the throne after the Fire Lord's defeat. I don't think Team Avatar allows Azula to become the next Fire Lord. Katara and Toph defeat her, leaving Sokka and Suki to destroy the airship fleet alone. Azula is locked away, just like she is in the original timeline. I don't see Toph expressing the same level of empathy for her that Katara does, but Azula's defeat is still a somber, sobering occasion, not a fist-pumping triumph. They wonder who is going to ascend to the Fire Nation throne. The entire royal family is either dead, captured, missing, or in Iroh's case, unwilling to ascend to the throne. Team Avatar sets up a provisional government. This would mirror what happened to Japan after the nation's defeat in World War II. Understandably, this provisional government is overwhelmingly unpopular. No one likes having a government imposed upon them by foreigners. This opens the door for Zuko's return. He reappears one night, and Team Avatar knows their delicately crafted plans are about to come crashing down. When he demands Ozai be released, he's rebuffed. Team Avatar tries to reach out to him, but a version of Zuko who is content to be his father's right hand and is willing to completely bury all the lessons he learned in Season 2 is not going to be convinced by their pleas. Instead, he offers himself as a candidate for the Fire Lordship. The Fire Nation masses instantly support him. Dire circumstances have a way of changing people's minds very quickly. Zuko may have been the disgraced and banished prince, but he still has Imperial blood. He's still the Fire Lord's son, and given the choice between being ruled by him and being ruled by a faceless coalition of foreigners, the people of the Fire Nation choose Zuko in a heartbeat, especially when he gives a speech about how he has learned from his mistakes and is ready to serve the legacy of Sozin, Azulon, and Ozai. Team Avatar doesn't want Zuko to become Fire Lord in this timeline. Katara outright loathes him. In this timeline, she never moves beyond her disdain for him. Why should she? Zuko refusing to change means her hatred is justified. He may have shown a spark of introspection and a small desire to change for the better, but this wasn't enough to overcome his desire for his father's approval. Still, she pities him. After Azula's defeat, Katara pities her, even though she never expresses remorse for her actions. That's what her relationship with Zuko is like in this timeline. She approaches Iroh, who loves Zuko, but has similar feelings toward him, and asks Iroh to be Fire Lord, even though Iroh has already refused the job. Dropping to her knees, she stresses how necessary it is for the causes of peace and balance that Iroh becomes the new Fire Lord, but still he refuses. This is perhaps selfishness, but it is understandable. Iroh is not the same person in this timeline. He is still wise and pacifistic, having undergone a great transformation in the aftermath of his son's demise. But the death of his son still haunts him intimately and intensely. While his grief will never fade completely, it is mitigated by his finding a surrogate son in Zuko, and by his guiding that surrogate son away from the path of darkness and toward real, genuine redemption. He yearns to help Zuko because he could not help his son. Because he succeeds in the original timeline, he is confident by the end of the show. He has triumphed, and he is sure destiny is on their side. He says as much in a speech he delivers immediately before the final battle. If Zuko does not redeem himself, Iroh does not feel this way. He blames himself for Zuko's failure. Logically, this is absurd. Iroh does more than anyone to push Zuko toward redemption and toward moral goodness. But feelings like pain and grief are not logical, and pretending otherwise is absurd. Iroh spends long nights thinking about what he could have done differently. He considers himself cursed, as he failed to protect not only his son, but also his surrogate son. His spirit is broken, and he cannot bring himself to take the Fire Lordship. Zuko releases Ozai once he ascends to power. For this, Ozai forgives Zuko and restores his honor. Zuko, unable to accept how little his father's approval means, considering his father is an abusive tyrant who has pursued a course of genocide on the Earth Kingdom, is warned by this. He tries to step aside and allow Ozai to retake the throne, but the world leaders won't have it. They warn that if Ozai is returned to the throne, hostilities will start anew. Understandably, the other nations have no desire to return to a status quo that cost hundreds of thousands of lives and resulted in a century of Fire Nation domination. Zuko thus stays on the throne, but the status quo does not change. He receives advice from Ozai, and even if he didn't, Ozai's presence would still shape him. He's still living in Ozai's shadow. It's possible another war would start, most likely over the Fire Nation colonies in the Earth Kingdom. This nearly happens in the comic trilogy The Promise, even though that takes place in the original timeline, in which Zuko is good. Of course, all this pondering about what would happen after the end of the show implies that Aang still manages to defeat the Fire Lord, and that is not a certainty. Before the final battle, in episode 318, Zuko teaches Aang how to redirect lightning. This is integral, as the Fire Lord shoots lightning at him during their battle. If Aang doesn't know how to redirect it, he probably dies. Now, it is possible that Iroh teaches him how to redirect it, just like he taught Zuko how to redirect it in episode 209, Bitter Work. But it is also possible that before he has the chance, Aang has already gone off on his lion turtle journey in search of guidance about what he should do about Ozai. Aang decides he can't kill Ozai, but then it doesn't matter, as Ozai kills him. However, because the question of what would happen if Aang died is rich and fascinating enough to be a topic for its own video, I will not talk about it here. This is a theory video, so we must conduct ourselves as scientists. And scientists make sure to only change one variable at a time when they're conducting an experiment. If you change more than one variable, the results become too convoluted to interpret properly. So let's say that Aang defeats Ozai but doesn't kill him, the same as happens in the show. However, after all the harm Ozai continues to cause after his defeat, Katara wonders if it would not have been wiser to kill him, though she of course does not say this to Aang, the pacifist. There is a case to be made for killing deposed leaders during a time of political tumult. This is and always has been a controversial issue, but the difference between deciding to not execute, say, a serial killer, and deciding to not execute a tyrannical dictator is that the serial killer is not going to get out of prison, whereas the leader could be placed back in power if the political tides shift. The French revolutionaries didn't only kill Louis XVI because they wanted blood, they also killed him because they knew he posed a threat to the nascent French Republic. Even after he was deposed from power, he tried to escape in the famous Flight to Varennes. His plan was to regroup once he did, and draw the other world leaders to his cause. This was a major reason why the revolutionaries decided the monarchy needed to be completely abolished, instead of merely having its powers restricted. But even if Ozai was killed, whether by Katara or by a rogue assassin who sneaks into the prison and kills him after the end of the 100-Year War, there is still the problem of Fire Lord Zuko. When Zuko takes the Fire Lord ship in the original series, it's a sign of a new era for the Fire Nation. Fear is not going to be its driving force anymore. Peace and kindness will be, as Zuko said they should be when he confronted Ozai during the Day of Black Sun. This doesn't mean everything is rainbows and butterflies, but it does mean the world is changing for the better. It's moving in the right direction. However, in this alternate timeline, Zuko is basically Ozai the sequel, or even more depressingly, Sozin Part 4. This doesn't mean he's exactly the same as Ozai. Even before his redemption arc, he demonstrates himself to be more fair-minded and more capable of mercy than Ozai has ever been shown to be. Think about when he refuses to burn Zhao in the third ever episode of the show, The Southern Air Temple. Unless he somehow becomes a worse person than he was at the start of the series, he will still be the best leader the Fire Nation has had since the pre-Sozin years. But this doesn't mean he will be good or moral. There's no real sign of progress from a Fire Nation ruled by Ozai to one ruled by Zuko. The underlying ethos of the nation has not changed. It's not that the world isn't better, it's that the world hasn't improved enough, perhaps, to justify the lengths to which Team Avatar went to end the war. The Fire Lord may have been defeated, but the Fire Nation is still fiercely militaristic. The Fire Nation's campaign of conquest may have ended, but there are indications that a new conflict could start soon. The central issues of the war have not been resolved. One tyrant has been replaced with another, only slightly less cruel tyrant. This would be fiercely anticlimactic. It would crush the spirits of Team Avatar. I suspect it would be especially difficult for Katara to stomach, considering how idealistic she is. Maybe she welcomes the opportunity to leave the cynical chaos of the world behind and raise a family with Aang. Or perhaps she, like Iroh, wanders around the world and has a change of heart. Of course, this is a change of heart of a very different sort. Iroh's change of heart led to him becoming a less militaristic and more empathetic person. Katara's change of heart could perhaps have the opposite effect on her. It would lead to her developing a darker and more cynical worldview. There is nothing inherently wrong with an anticlimactic ending. I want to make that clear. Anticlimax, when done for a narrative and thematic point, and not just to surprise the audience, can be extraordinarily effective. If a work merely has a dark tone and keeps calling attention to how dark it is, that is self-congratulatory pablum. However, if a work has a lighter tone, then consciously switches to a darker tone in order to prove a point, that's different. That's more powerful. That's deeply affecting. Team Avatar's goal, since its formation in the second ever episode of the show, The Avatar Returns, is to defeat the Fire Lord and stop the 100-Year War. While they approach that goal in many different ways throughout the course of the series and change significantly as people while doing so, that goal itself remains unaltered. If Ozai is defeated, but the basic structures of the wartime world do not change, and the tensions between the nations remain intact, Team Avatar will realize that their goals were overly simplistic. If this is a flaw, it is an understandable one. They are just teenagers. Though they're smart and cunning, they lack experience. The aftermath of Ozai's defeat teaches them what a later Avatar, Korra, learns at great cost. It's not enough to just defeat tyranny. You need a positive vision for the world. Team Avatar swears to continue fighting together to promote balance. It's a tender ending, but it's not the triumphant one the original timeline has. So much depends upon what decision Zuko makes. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more content like this. Keep watching Avatar. It is a fantastic show and one that has so many nuances and complexities. Tune in soon for the next Avatar Explained video. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.